G'day YouTubers, this is Joe from Ars Alien TV, and now today we're doing something a bit different. I'm going to be trying to demonstrate to you that the Mars rovers are not on Devon Island. There's a lot of videos out there claiming that all the Mars images from the rovers are from Devon Island, and none of them actually show any concrete evidence for this, or any sort of even vaguely convincing evidence for this, other than getting a photograph and then putting an orange filter on it, like this here. There's a whole plethora of these, and they're predominantly from channels that are flat Earth channels, which says a lot, because basically these people are delusional. And now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that I don't think some of the images we get from Mars are not doctored or manipulated. I think a lot of them are. The same with the moon images we get. A lot of people have noticed, I did a video a few days ago about the Chang'e 4. Now, this image from Chang'e 4 was taken not long after it landed, about a week ago, and it's very brown, okay? It almost looks the same sort of colour as Mars, like we've got here. There's a Mars image here, and here, and here. And but that may just be down to the fact that this is a different camera. The descent camera they used, they actually filmed Chang'e 4 coming in, and the moon looks kind of grey like it normally does in other images we've seen. But this image here was taken by a different camera on the actual rover itself, and it may have an orange filter on it, like the rovers do on Mars. Now, this is supposedly done to gather near infrared and infrared information, so that may be a reason for that. But I digress. Let's stick to the plan here. Now, what I've got, not only are there the whole plethora of these videos about the Mars images being taken on Devon Island, I've got a couple of searches up here as well. I've got the Wikipedia page up here. Now, the problem is with Devon Island is that it's actually covered in snow for about 11 months of the year, and the snow only melts in the midsummer for about a month, and then it snows again, and then it gets covered in ice and snow again. So that's one major problem with Devon Island looking like Mars. It does in places, however, look a bit like Mars, but you can see the snow in the background here. You've got this permafrost up here. Okay, you've got all that snow and frost up there, so you know it doesn't really match up. I've got it on Wikipedia here. I've also got some other articles here. I've got some pictures here somewhere. Where are they? Here we are. These are mainly from that Wikipedia page. Now, the main reason why many people have said that the rovers are on Devon Island is that NASA used to test rovers there and had a kind of little simulated Mars area, and they would test their spacesuits and rovers and test the cameras and that kind of thing. And that is the one and only reason why people say that the rovers are on Devon Island. Now, if you use the same logic as that, it's a bit like saying that every time you get in your car, you are in fact participating in a simulation, because every single car that's on the road now has been tested in a simulator, okay? They've been crash tested, they've been tested over different types of terrain in simulated environments, okay? Special environments that are specially put together to put them through their paces, right? Does that mean that every time you get in your car that you're in fact not getting in your car but getting into a simulator? No, it does not. So that logic doesn't really carry. So I'll leave a link. I'll leave links to all this stuff up. You can just check out these images. And one of the main reasons for this, there was quite a good actual conspiracy video done about 4 or 5 years ago now by Richard Hall. I think Richard Hall from the UK, who does some very interesting stuff actually. And I'm not disrespecting him in any way, of course. He did it, but what his video did say very clearly at the beginning, that it was only a hypothesis, not even a theory. just a hypothesis, mainly due to this picture here of the Mars, the so-called Mars gopher or mouse or rat or whatever it's supposed to be. Now, this does look a bit like a gopher or a lemming, and I think him and a few of his friends, Rich Hall, came up with the idea that it looked a bit like an Arctic lemming. There was also this photograph from Mars of a bone, and it looks a bit like a bone from a walrus or something, and this has also been given as evidence that it's filmed on Devon Island, because obviously there are creatures like this on Devon Island. Yeah, so now that is about as far as it goes. Now, I think there was one other image I think that used in that video that people seem to worship, like some kind of flat Earth kind of god. There was, I think, some petrified wood, a log of petrified wood on the surface of Mars. And they also claim that that couldn't possibly be on Mars because Mars is a dead planet. But of course, we know now that Mars is not a dead planet and wasn't a dead planet. It may be largely dead now, but there are many, many things on Mars that say that it cannot possibly be Devon Island. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you now. Google Earth here. I've got Devon Island here. Of course, you can just type it in the top here and then do a search like I've done. And it's next to Greenland here. Greenland's huge. And we've got this rather small island. Well, it's actually not that small. It's a medium-sized sort of island next to it here. Now, most of this is completely covered in snow most of the year round. And when the snow melts, it goes. Large parts of it are green, as I showed you in those photographs a minute ago. So the actual topography and colours and everything else don't really match up. But of course, the colours can be manipulated and can be changed in Mars images, which we know that is possible, of course, by using a colour filter. But that doesn't prove that they're on Devon Island. And there is a crater on Devon Island, but it's only about 23 kilometres across and is only about a mile or so deep. And that, if you come to this page here, Wikipedia about Devon Island, it goes into more details about the large crater. So the crater doesn't even match Gale Crater on Mars. Gale Crater is huge. I think it's 93 kilometres wide, and at its deepest point, about 4,700 metres deep. Okay, so the scale is on a completely different size. It's multiple sizes bigger than the largest crater on Devon Island. So the comparisons simply do not match up. So, I mean, you could take your time and check out some of these videos. Most of them are absolute garbage, and some have only had like 100 views or something. But there are some actually that may come up. The Rich Hall one, I think, has had a lot of views, and it's a very interesting video, and it's a very good exercise in critical thinking. But basically, when you have things like this on Mars, like I've got here, now is it really possible that any of these things could be on Devon Island? I'm just going to show you some of them now. These, for instance. There's nothing like this on Devon Island. Now, these are in the northern regions of Mars, near the sort of northern ice cap, below the ice cap, in what is the melt zone. Now, this area freezes and melts every year, obviously, depending on what time of year it is. And there are millions of these large, shiny, metallic domes everywhere, okay? And you can measure them. You can use the ruler on Google Earth. You go to Google Earth, then go to Mars, and then look at the northern areas, and zoom in, and you'll see millions of these domes. Shiny, metallic-looking domes. Some of them don't look quite as shiny. It depends on when the images were taken. There are lots of different images that compile Google Mars, and some of them were taken a long time ago, but there's a lot of newer ones of the surface, and they're in quite good detail. And this is one of my favourite images. These are 400 foot wide. and they're all the same size, and they're not natural. So I actually think these are, or were, dwellings on Mars, and they're metallic domes that people live in, or aliens, or whatever you want to call them. So there we are. Now, you don't have these on Devon Island either. This is about 300 to 400 feet high. In fact, there's another shot of it here somewhere, which is slightly better, I think. The black and white shot here. There we are. Now, this is on the lower slopes of Mount Sharp, and I showed this in a video the other day, actually. And it's a pyramid. They don't have pyramids on Devon Island, do they? As far as I know. And they don't have giant skulls like this. This isn't even a human skull. It's not even a Neanderthal skull. This is an alien skull. It's way bigger than a human skull. This is probably about 4 times the size of a human skull, and is absolutely huge. That's an Opportunity rover image. What else do we have? We have all sorts of crazy things here. There's the dome which I showed in a video the other day, in my most recent video. They don't have, this is between 300 and 400 foot high also, about the same size as that pyramid I just showed you. Absolutely massive. Now, the largest building you will find on Devon Island is probably only about 12 foot tall, maybe 15 or 20 feet tall. There are some ruins in the old port area, but the island hasn't been inhabited since 1951, and the only people that have been there are a few NASA scientists and people training to be astronauts who go there on a course to get used to wearing the spacesuit and moving around and doing various tasks and learning about geology and stuff. Okay, so this is way, way bigger than any of the ruins left in the harbour or any of the temporary buildings that NASA put there, which were just dropped there. Okay, so this is on a massive scale. There's nothing like it on Devon Island. There's also this giant skull here. This is enormous. It's getting on for about 20 inches from the chin to the top of the head here. So this is a giant. And it's not human, it's not Neanderthal, it's not like anything we've got down here. If you look at the teeth, and it's got a reverse nasal cavity. It's up the other way to ours, so that's not human, it's not even remotely human, but it is humanoid. And is extremely robust and would have come right out to here, up to here. This is around 20 inches, way, way bigger than anything we've got here, at least that we've been told. There are also amazing carvings all over the place. This is one that I found about a year ago and was in all the press and everything. Has made it into lots of documentaries now. This is only about 3 or 4 inches high, and I think it's rather elegant. Has Egyptian looking qualities to it. There are also carvings of animals that don't exist on Devon Island, like cats. And this type of cat here, this is a carving, doesn't even exist on Earth. There's no match for it down here. I've only compared it to this one because that was sort of similar, but it's not the same. This particular cat has very different morphology and has always these kind of strange nodules on it as well. Now, this may have been underwater, so there may have been like little seashells and creatures living on there for a while before the water evaporated, so who knows about that. So there are lots and lots of things on the Mars surface that simply you would never see on a place like Devon Island. Devon Island has a very large bird population. There are also muskox living there, wandering about, so, and we haven't seen any of those. So there we are, and there seems to be a lot of apes, or there were apes on the Mars surface. And there have never been any primates of that sort in the Arctic, as far as we know. None have ever been found, and no remains have ever been found either. Let me find you an example here. Hang on a minute. Now, some of these are quite recent finds. Let's go to the most recent ones at the bottom here, and I'll show you what I mean. Let me show you something that I haven't published before. Right, this is something I haven't shown you before. This is a new find. I actually found it about back in November last year, but I kind of forgot to show you all it. And I have put it on my Facebook group, Art Alien TV Mars Magazine, once or twice. But what the hell could this be? Now, this looks like some kind of alien head, or Martian head, with a mouth here, an eye here, a very kind of weird sort of flat nose, like a lot of them have, and some kind of strange headgear. I mean, it almost looks like looks like a face hugger kind of on it, you know, like from the Alien film, with a kind of spine here, and these could be limbs kind of curved around. Very strange indeed. I really don't know what to make of it, and there seems to be another little weird thing here in front of it. There are these sort of little heads and skulls all over the place, and craniums all over the place on Mars, especially in Gale Crater. And a lot of them are primates, like apes, very small, a lot of them. But some of them are quite large. This, I would say, is human-sized. Very strange. What else could it be? I don't know. Even if this isn't a head, this thing on top of it certainly doesn't look like a rock. Whichever way you look at it, really. So that was interesting. There are some other new finds. There was this one I found just the other day, which looks a bit like a pig or some kind of weird creature. Very strange indeed. Look at that ear. You've got an eye there. It's a bit faint, but it's a low-res camera, and they've got the orange filter on it. And all we've got to do really is colour correct it a bit and add a bit of contrast. They're not that bad. I'm actually going back to the Curiosity images now. I actually think they're a lot better than many of the other images we get from Mars, because at least they're on the ground and they're reasonably good, some of them. Most of them aren't, but some of them are okay. A lot of it does depend on the lighting and how the light conditions are on the surface, and which way the rover tends to be looking. If the shadows are in a certain direction, you can't see things very well. So it does depend on the lighting and the angles a lot of the time. But sometimes we get little things like this up close. This is only about 1 inch or 2 in size, very small indeed. This is another reason why many of these things look blurry and a bit hard to see, is because they're really small and they're taken from a distance. Even with a high-res camera, like you might have on your mobile phone, even if you've got, let's say, a 20 meg camera, they don't have very good zoom lenses on mobile phones because they don't have a physical zoom. The Curiosity rover has a very powerful zoom lens, and sometimes zooms miles into the mountain, and we'd see things from a long, long way away, which we wouldn't normally see. So it's quite a powerful camera, but unfortunately, it doesn't often focus on individual little things like this. They take lots and lots of kind of panoramic kind of shots, or lots and lots of individual shots, which are then made into panoramics, and they're kind of on landscape setting, so everything's slightly blurred anyway. So that's why the images aren't that great, a lot of them. Here's the one I published just the other day. Here's the giant dome from another angle. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I've got it on my page here. Pointed Dome on Mars Part 2. So there's an update on the original image I published about a year ago. Here. So that's well worth looking at. So there's all sorts here. I'm not going to show you all of these things. I mean, there was this one that I showed in the previous video. I mean, do they have things like this on Devon Island? I mean, this is clearly a cranium here. There's the head. There's the eye. Nasal cavity there. Mouth, you can see teeth showing through. This is mummified. Now, this could have been there a million years. Could have been there only 1,000 years. I don't know. Can't tell you. So there we are. They don't have things like that on Devon Island, unless NASA kind of dropped a load of alien sort of remains on the island, and got some people in and built a massive pyramids and domes, and did loads of carvings of strange animals, like we have, and things like that. I mean, what are the chances of that? Pretty slim, I would say. I mean, you've even got things like reptilian sort of statues and stuff like that, like this one. Do they even have reptiles of any sort on Devon Island? Maybe. I don't think they do, actually. I don't think they have any reptiles on Devon Island at all. They have birds. They have Arctic lemmings, and walruses and seals and things like that around the coast. But that's about it. There aren't any penguins there, of course, because penguins live in the South Pole, not the North Pole. They might get the occasional bear, like a polar bear, wandering about and hunting some seals or walruses or whatever. But that's about it. Of course, there's the muskox, which is a big, hairy sort of bison-like cow type creature with great big horns on it, with very long, shaggy hair. So, this is insane. Look at this thing. Absolutely mental. I really can't see how you get something like that on Devon Island. And then you've got things like this, just lying around. And this thing is about 18 to 24 inches long. Huge, this thing is. It's quite a way off from the camera, but it's there. This is a raptor skull, a dinosaur. Okay? You can even see the teeth there, even in the raw image. I've still got eye detail in there as well, even on the raw image. Let's zoom into that. See that? Teeth. They're a bit vague, but they're there. Image is a bit out of focus, but it's good enough. Good enough to see. There are also things like this giant sort of cranium here. This is mummified, a mummified kind of skull specimen here. You see the jaw coming around here. See teeth here. See the nose there, eye sockets, pretty clear. Even in the raw image you can see it. Just there. So what I also found in November last year. So I'm not going to go through all of these now, but there are lots and lots of strange things on Mars, and they do not match anything on Earth, let alone anything on Devon Island. This is a very good example, this one here. This was found by Terry Burnett, very good researcher. It's a little mummified person. That's here. Got a hand and arm here. This hand's broken off, or maybe kind of partially broken off. Got a little head with some weird headgear on, like coming down here. You see the arms. Next to this very, very strange, bony looking structure, which may be remains of a dead creature. Don't know what it is. Very hard to tell. And this is quite small. This thing is only about 4 inches. If it was stood up, it would probably be 8 or 9. Maybe possibly 10. But we're only seeing half of it here. The legs don't seem to be there. They're either buried just below or they're kind of behind this object here. So, do we have things like that on Devon Island? Don't think so. I could go on and on and on. I've got so many things here, and these are just some of the things that I've found in recent months. And there are loads and loads of weird, strange objects on Mars, and none of them match particularly things on Earth. Apart from the odd thing, there are a few things that do look a bit like they're from Earth. Like this one here. And as someone said the other day on my channel, this either proves that the images were taken on Earth, or there were tanks on Mars. Which is it? Now, a lot of people would say, well, these images must be taken on Earth. But this is tiny, this thing. The thing on the right here, this T-34, is quite large. It's not massive, but it's a full-size, what I would call it, it's a medium tank, World War II tank. It's pretty big. And you can look up the dimensions, and most of you would know how big these are, I would imagine. Boys and girls. It's not just boys that like tanks. There are plenty of girls. I do play a game called World of Tanks. There are plenty of girls that play the game as well, and they're very good. I've had my ass kicked many a time. But this one on the left is only a fraction of the size of this, and is on this ridge line up here. It's only a fraction of the size. In fact, it's probably about less than 5 feet from the front to the back here. From there to there. This thing is way, way bigger. Multiple sizes bigger than that. I don't know the exact dimensions. I could find out, but that would take too long now. But this is a kind of almost toy-sized, this thing here. It's not much bigger than a dinner table or a small little pool table. You know, tiny. So there is a big discrepancy in the sizes. many of the things on Mars are really small compared to what we have down here. A lot of the remains of these little mummy-like remains are tiny, very small indeed. Some of them are absolutely huge, like some of the skulls and fossils. But in the main, I would say most of these things, especially the skulls and carvings, are tiny. And I think a lot of them are actually burial items, like we have here. They may have some strange burial rituals on Mars that we know nothing of, or very little about. And we can only really compare these things to what we've already seen on Earth. You can't compare things to something you've never seen before. And I often fall into that trap of comparing things directly to things we have on Earth. And people say, well, you can't do that. I say, well, how else would you do it? You can only compare it to things you've already seen. And I mean, this thing that's like this is tiny. This is only about 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 inches at most, but no more than that high. We have a little post here on this strange structure, which looks like wood. And we have a head nailed to it. And you can even see a nail going in there, sticking out. And obviously I've colour filtered this. So there's some very strange burial items on the surface of Mars, and this is miniature, okay? Very odd indeed. It's like a tribal marker, almost. Very strange. And then we have weird sort of animal carvings. This is some sort of weird sort of cat-like creature. Let me zoom in a bit. It's a bit hard to make out because we're not seeing it front on. This is facing to the right here. You've got an eye here. You've got a downturned mouth, nose here, and 2 ears sticking up, okay? And there's another weird little creature's head there. Don't know what it is, like a little dog or something with long ears coming down. 2 eyes, there's a nose, a mouth with teeth. I don't know what these creatures are. This looks a bit like a cat, that looks a bit like a dog, but they may be nothing like that. Absolutely no idea. I think this one here is part of a burial figurine. A large proportion of Gale Crater was a kind of burial area, and the Curiosity rover is driven right through the centre of it, which is why we keep seeing these little weird figurines and burial things on the ground, because it was a graveyard. And if you don't believe that, well, there's a gravestone I found just the other day. Here we are. Actually, I found it in October. But yeah, this is one that I published recently anyway. And there's a video about this. There's a gravestone. And it has some kind of emblems on it, but it's too vague to make out, unfortunately. But you can clearly see that nice arch there. And imagine this would go right down into the ground and probably come down to about here, but it's kind of buried, like most of the things are. But the high winds on Mars will uncover things, and often you get these weird sort of carvings cropping up. Some of them are quite grotesque, like this one. Very grotesque. I call this one Mr. Green Chin for obvious reasons. And even in the raw image, you can see that quite clearly. Once you let your eyes adjust. So these things are there. There's no denying it, and they're not on Devon Island, and they're not in the South Pole either. They're not in the Nevada desert or some test area. Just because NASA tests things in places like Devon Island doesn't mean that all this is on Devon Island. If we were to use that logic, like I said before, every time you get in your car, you're entering a simulator and it isn't actually real. If that's the case, then how do people get run over? Yeah, right, okay. So I'm going to call it a day, guys. I've been going on and on a bit here. My voice is starting to go. I've still got a bit of a cold. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll put links to all these things in the description below. Most of these images I've already published in various videos, which you can just scroll through and go right back. Some of them from years ago, like this one. Some of them more recently. This is near that tank I showed you. May have even been one of the guys that operated it. Could be a tank commander with an earring and a mullet. Very strange indeed. It's not that far from that tank. This is a bit smaller than human size, I'd say. But within the realms of human size, I would say, how tall would that be? It's about 6 inches from chin to the top here. Human skulls are a little bit bigger than that. Not a lot though. So that's within the bounds of human size, but it's not human. Kind of proto-human looking, I would say. Okay, so the Martians were all different types. Some were very large, some were very small, some were human sized, some were kind of in between. But they had very large buildings, at least in the distant past. Massive buildings like we have in Egypt and in Central and South America. So there must have been a whole different bunch of civilizations on Mars, and some of them may have actually crossed over. Some may have been wiped out. They may have had wars there against other planets or each other, and some of them may have overlapped. And unfortunately, most of the buildings we see, the only ones we see left, are some of these rather large stone buildings that survived the cataclysm, mainly because they have a good ballistic shape and would have deflected any massive shockwave from, say, a nuclear explosion. Whereas all the sort of smaller, more modern structures were probably wiped out and destroyed. So there we are. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.